On the Age of Reinvention, I explore relocation and the expat lifestyle through the real-life experiences of expats, people who move from Western countries abroad, and immigrants, people who live for years in the West. Who is Emily Bron, owner of the international lifestyle consulting from Canada? My life has been a series of relocations and adaptations. I was born and raised in the former Soviet Union, witnessed societal changes during the perestroika, relocated to Ukraine, and later, with my family, immigrated to Israel, where I had to navigate a new language, profession, and society. My second immigration, in Canada, we face the challenges of integrating into a new country and adapting to a different climate and lifestyle. Currently, I'm preparing for my next life chapter and relocation to Mexico. I offer my knowledge about relocation and observations about current global relocation trends through the lens of immigrant who have lived for many years in the West. The life experiences shared by my guests are invaluable. I'm deeply grateful for the opportunity to share these insights with others who are considering a similar lifestyle change, particularly in the context of relocation and life abroad. And today I would like to offer you to know Emily Rubin. Emily Rubin is a certified professional life coach with 16 years of experience and a roster of clients around the world. She works with people who are truly committed to making changes in their lives. Her coaching style has been described as an iron fist, velvet glove. I really like this impression. Compassionate and direct. Her clients are primarily women in their 50s and older who are facing challenging transitions in their lives and are ready to take bold steps. They are making career changes or starting their new own businesses. They're preparing to retire or a romantic relationship that need work, or simply longing for something new and cannot figure out what it is. Emily asks them powerful questions, listen to the emotions underlying their words, tells them exactly what she's hearing, and together they create a roadmap for achieving goal. Emily was trained as certified professional coactive coach by the Coactive Training Institute and holds a master's degree in social work from the Hunter College School of Social Work. In addition to her career and helping professionals, Emily has also worked in marketing and public relations as copywriter and editor. She makes her editing skills available to her clients as needed in the form of resumes, cover letters, and other communication-based documents. Emily divides her time between New York City and Oaxaca, Mexico. She can be reached via her website, emilyrubinlifecoaching.com, or her Facebook group, Emily Rubin Life Coaching. So don't worry if you didn't get exactly the website name or Facebook group. It will be included in the description below our conversation. And again, good morning, Emily.
Good morning to you, Emily. Thank you for having me, and I'm very excited to have this conversation.
Thank you. And I was thinking how we will select the topics today. I found area of questions because speaking about my where I'm touching such questions as relocation after year change, retirement upcoming or already for some people looking to what to do during this new stage of life. Actually, you and what you're doing, ticking all these boxes, I would say, which relates to me, my search, personal search in the past,
my search of relocating abroad, and actually we selected the same country.
Yes, we did.
Yes, so I'm already a temporary resident of Mexico, and we exploring this new culture and country, huge one, like step by step. So we have a lot of things in common. And with all this, I'm very interested in your approach because you're a professional coach and you are dealing with a woman in the same age group, actually helping them with practical steps and tips and overcome some fears and get the clarity what to do next. Could you share more about your personal journey and what led you to coaching? Was there a particular moment and event that you decided to pursue this?
Absolutely. I'm happy to. I had a very long and interesting and relatively successful career for many years working in public relations and marketing. I worked for a number of big companies, and as I got promoted and kept moving up the ladder in that world, I kept feeling like I was in one of those dreams that you have where you show up at school in your pajamas and you don't really understand why. That was very much how I felt about that phase of my career. I was doing the work, I was achieving success, but I didn't really know what I was doing there. And so in my 40s, through a series of interesting personal life experiences and just interest in being of service, I went to graduate school for social work, which I absolutely loved. It was a wonderful experience for me. Going back to school in your 40s and paying for it at that time in your life is very fulfilling. I was really committed to it. I was working, I was going to school, and it was wonderful. Graduated with my master's in social work and realized that I hadn't really quite yet found what I call my sweet spot. I studied community organizing, which is very macro, very helping groups and working around large groups, but not with individuals. And I didn't want to be a therapist per se. And at that time in my life, I discovered the profession of life coaching, which is still relatively new. It's not something that's been around as certainly not as long as therapy. And I got myself a coach who was a wonderful coach and mentor to me. He trained in a very rigorous training program, became certified as a coach, and began my practice. And in the beginning, like with any new profession, you will work with almost anybody who wants to work with you. I worked with men, I worked with women, I worked with adults, I worked with young people. And I discovered that really where my sweet spot was working with women like me who were struggling with, dealing with, and challenged by the same kinds of things. What am I going to do next in my life? And they turned out to be women close in age to me who were, excuse me, I have the very bad Oaxaca cold that's going around right now. So I will cough and I am drinking a lot of water. So bear with me if my voice.
It's okay. We will speak about Oaxaca later. Yes.
It's one of my favorite topics. So I discovered that because of my life experiences and my challenges and my difficulty finding the place that I wanted to be professionally, it took me a very long time. It took me until my 50s to figure out what I truly wanted to do. I found that I am a good person for other people to talk to about these things. I've had very lived experience with what kind of work I want to do, where do I want to live, am I doing the right thing, what about if I take a pay cut? All of the questions that we ask ourselves. And so that's essentially how I became a coach. It's a profession that I adore. I have seen in my 16 years of coaching remarkable things happen. I've seen a lot of very magical things happen to people through the coaching process. And one of the things I love the most about it is that it's a real opportunity and a real gift that a person gives, I'll say herself, because most of my clients are women now, that a woman gives herself to have space for thinking about things in a different way, having a trained professional ask her very powerful questions, listen in a very specific way, not only to the words that are being said, but to the emotions underlying the words, to repeat back to the person what I, as the coach, am hearing, to talk about that. And through this process, and a lot of the work actually happens between coaching sessions, through this process, help my clients develop some kind of a roadmap for what they want to do next. And the other thing I want to say about coaching, and one of the reasons I love it so much, is the accountability factor. When my clients start working with me, I explain to them very clearly, your first priority is to be accountable to yourself. You have made a commitment to invest in coaching. You have made a commitment to invest in figuring out how to get unstuck and move to the next place you want to be in your life, literally and figuratively. And you're also accountable to me because I give homework assignments. I don't believe it's enough to just talk the talk. You've got to walk the talk. And I give very specific homework assignments that are very focused on how this person wants to proceed. And we talk about the homework assignments in the course of our coaching session. And if the person is truly serious about it, they will be accountable, as I said, to themselves first and to me as well, to complete the assignments and to then move forward. A lot of people don't do the homework. It doesn't mean coaching is not successful, but I have found that the accountability piece within the context of assignments has been the thing that has been the most powerful for moving people forward. And I think it's, as I said, I've seen very magical things happen when people have taken the coaching seriously and really put their heart and their soul into it.
It's very interesting, and I'm looking to dive a little bit deeper. As a life coach, you presumably have the opportunity to change lives. Could you tell us about the time when you felt that you made significant impact on somebody's life?
Absolutely. There's one story that I love to share, and it's just very meaningful to me. I was working with a Chinese woman who was living in China. Let me tell you, time differences are a big challenge when you're working with someone in Asia. We both had to be very flexible about the timing of our calls. But she was a woman who had a very successful career in China in advertising. She was living in Beijing. She was married. She had 2 young children, very successful. Very unhappy. She hated what she was doing, and she had a dream of starting a program to teach Chinese children English. Not only because she was herself fluent in English, she had studied in the United States and worked in the United States, and her English was perfect. She also had these young sons for whom learning English was going to be a very important part of their school education experience. And she felt that she really had a dream to be a teacher that she had never manifested before. And so through our coaching process, this woman kept working during the day, began to research opening up her own school, very small program initially. She started in her home, in her living room, on the weekends with children who were either neighbors or children of friends of hers. And over the course of our coaching, she eventually took a private space, and she has since developed a thriving program of teaching with a whole lineup of teachers to help Chinese children learn English in a way that was meaningful and fun. She was continuing to work. She was a mother. She was a wife. She was running the second business out of her home, and she nurtured it like she would a third child. And it has subsequently become a very successful endeavor for her, and she's happy. I haven't coached her in a while, but we stay in touch, and I hear about all her achievements. And to me, that is magic. When you have this dream inside of your head that maybe you've never dared to speak aloud, or you have spoken about it, but you just don't think it's ever going to be possible, and to see it come true is remarkable.
I really like this story. I'm wondering how long and for how many sessions she was working with you, because I understand the transformation should take time.
Yes, she and I worked together for quite a while, probably, I would say maybe a year. I offer my clients packages where they can work with me long-term, short-term. I will not work with anyone for less than 3 months because of weekly calls, because I don't believe that transformation on that level can happen in less than 3 months. So like the old saying, you can't change a habit in less than a month. Well, I think coaching isn't going to be as impactful in less than 3 months. So that's my minimum. And of course, I have one client who I continue to work with. She was one of my first clients during my training. And that was quite a while ago. And we continue to coach because she really appreciates a weekly check-in. Our sessions are short because it is such a frequency, but it's like I'm keeping a record of her life and her achievements. And a big part of coaching is being a cheerleader for your clients and supporting them and encouraging them and reminding them when they're having, for example, a difficult day. Remember a year ago when you didn't even think that such and such a thing was possible or even on the horizon, and look what you've done. So a lot of it is about cheerleading for your clients, supporting them when they feel they're feeling depleted, they don't have the energy to push forward, and to really maintain a record of their progress as you work together, because that can be very helpful and very exciting for someone who's feeling down in the dumps and suddenly says, yeah, I quit that job that I hated. I left that relationship. I did make that big move to another country. I did have that challenging conversation with a family member that has changed the nature of how we experience each other. So yes, it is a process, and everybody's time frame within the context of coaching is different. That's also part of the fun of it, is you get to work with somebody and at the end of a designated period, look back and say, wow, you really made some stuff happen in your life. I'm really proud of you. And I hope, more importantly, that you're really proud of you.
And I think after the certain time, you develop relationship with this person, and yes, and obviously even after transformation period, and people need support because we have different days, and sometimes we have concerns about if we are moving in correct direction, even we know inside that it is what we achieve. So I believe that converting relationship, it's still professional, but to the personal relationship, it's very important part.
I check in with my clients. I stay in touch with them. They often refer friends and family members to me, which is, of course, wonderful. I have my own coach with whom I have a coaching relationship, and she's also been really great about checking in with me, particularly during this process, which I know we will get to, of my having finally made a move to Mexico, which is something I've dreamed of for a very long time. So yes, a coach takes on a number of roles in a person's life if that's what the client wants.
Again, thinking about freedom and purpose both fit as a personal topic for many of us and as a topic of my podcast. I'm really curious, what is your view? How do freedom and purpose take a new meaning after 50, especially when embarking on retirement?
Absolutely. It's so interesting. It's been such a fascinating process. I have found amongst my women friends, whether they're married, whether they're single, this is a joke, but it's not. There are 5 things we talk about when we hit our 60s. We talk about when to take Social Security. We talk about, oh my God, I'm going to have to deal with the challenges of Medicare and the different parts I'm going to have to buy. We talk about knee and hip surgery. We talk about lack of sleep, and we talk about memory issues. And I sometimes will share this with people, that these are the things that I hear all the time, both in my personal life and my professional life. But it's not funny. It's true. And it speaks to a certain fear we have about the future and about our health and about our financial well-being and about our physical issues. Memory loss is very freaky. And certainly even the memory loss that is natural part of the aging process can be very frightening. So yes, these are all topics that in some way, shape, or form relate. It's funny, Emily. I don't know that I want to use the word retirement. I really don't like that word. I myself am not retired. I continue to work. I have friends who have stopped working in a professional capacity and don't consider themselves retired.
Just a moment. For me, retirement, I redefined meaning of this word. For me, retirement, it's the best page of your life, chapter of your life, where you retire from before, probably professions that you didn't like. It was in my case, in case of many of your clients, you retire from a life which was before, and your responsibilities just shifting. Like you were a mother, you're still mother, but you had a lot of responsibilities of raising your children, helping your parents. It's probably still part of your life. But for me, it just you. That's why I'm speaking about age of reinvention. It's retirement from the past life and opening and development of something new that now it's your time to, implement your dreams, to develop your talents. You didn't have time and opportunities before. It's what retirement for me.
I understand completely, and I'm in complete accord with you about the philosophy. You're talking about what it is. I just find that the word is very triggering. So I love the idea of using the word reinvention as a replacement for the word retirement. That's what I'm saying. I find my friends get very triggered when that word pops into conversation. And one of the things that I'm about to embark on is I'm going to create a small virtual workshop for women, small group, to talk about this next phase of life. And I'm looking for phrases to use to help me talk about this. And reinvention is certainly one of those words. The other word that I particularly like that I've heard people say is, instead of retirement, they say refirement. And I don't know if you've heard that word, but I think that's also a really fun and very evocative way to talk about this next phase of life, when you do have the freedom, in some cases, to not have to be working anymore. You choose not to be able to do some traveling, to be able to do the things that you maybe didn't have time for in the past. So I believe wholeheartedly in the concept. I'm just not crazy about the word. It has a connotation that a lot of people I know find uncomfortable.
And that's why I'm using this word as well, even a different definition, because I believe, and I'm trying to explain, people still used to this word, but with the time and with conversation we have, it will get different meaning and new fire and new purpose. But since it's a keyword, I would say we still need to use it. And I hope that eventually for many people who would connect with us mentally and emotionally.
It's interesting. As you're talking, I'm thinking a little bit about a couple of challenges that I have faced, as have my clients, as have my friends. Ageism, it's real. It exists. And one of the things that I have found is it has existed in my professional life, but I have not let it hold me back in my personal aspirations. If you don't mind, now I can segue a little bit into talking about my decision to live in Mexico.
Absolutely. It might be next topic.
Great. I've been coming to a city in southern Mexico called Oaxaca since the mid-1990s. In fact, a friend of mine who I first came with, she reminded me that we visited for the first time in 1995. From the minute I arrived here, I felt on some level like I had come home. It was inexplicable, it was deep, and it was very powerful. And I have been, from that year until a couple of years ago, been coming back on vacations as often as I could. And I'd say between 1995 and 2022, I've been here 20 times. And in 2022, I decided it was time, because it was, of course, pandemic time enabled us to work virtually. We learned that it was possible. And as both a coach and an editor, I was able to do all of my work virtually. So I decided to come and live in Oaxaca originally for 2 months. 2 months turned into 3 months, and 3 months turned into 4 months. And I then made a commitment that this was something a seed that I had planted for a long-term life here. And I wanted to continue to nurture it and grow it. So I came back again in 2023 and I decided I would stay for 6 months. And it was an interesting trip because during that trip, I was staying in different places. I wanted to move around the city and live in different neighborhoods to get to know other parts of the city. And during that time, a friend said to me, Emily, I've heard about a great apartment. It's available for rent. It's in a cool neighborhood. It's very reasonably priced. It's a safe part of the city. Why don't you check it out? I, of course, did. And I took the lease and I am now living in my own apartment in Oaxaca. So when I came back in 2024 for 6 months, I arrived in the beginning of February and I'm living in my home, which is quite wonderful. I am having a lot of thoughts about whether or not this will be a permanent space for me. I'm not ready to leave New York City yet. New York City is wonderful and thrilling, and it's been my home my entire adult life, and I'm not ready to say goodbye yet. And I'm very fortunate that because this apartment in Oaxaca is so reasonably priced, for the foreseeable future, I'm able and very lucky and have worked very hard to make these two lives possible. And that's been really quite wonderful. But as I said, Oaxaca has always been where my eyes have always been on this prize of getting to be here and getting to live here and getting to really deepen my relationship with this culture, this country, and this part of the world. So I feel very fortunate and I've worked very hard to make it happen. No joke there, but it's been great.
Tell me, please, why you felt at home? Could you analyze as even back years, what exactly from this particular place, or actually Mexico, but this particular place, which provided you this feeling?
Yeah, it's interesting you're saying that because there are certain places that are real magnets for Americans and Canadians. Oaxaca is becoming more, but it's certainly not like San Miguel de Allende or certain places around Guadalajara, Ajijic, and other places that have very large, very well established communities of, and I'm not going to say expats, that's another very controversial word, because if we are coming to another country to live here, we are migrants. We are just like the people who are trying to come to, or immigrants, just like people who are trying to come to the United States. In my learning about living in Mexico, I have discovered that both the Mexicans and the Americans and Canadians primarily who live here find it expat to be a somewhat offensive term. It's a bit of a surprise to me, but it makes sense when you think about it. It's a term of privilege because what makes us an expat and what makes people who want to come live in the United States migrants or immigrants. So,
just for me, just the point, migrants are people who coming for work, temporary, which is not case, like for work only. Sometimes they live for years. Particular point which interests them in this or other country. I consider myself immigrant, even I'm living 27 years in Canada. Immigrants, it's something else when you come, but in regards to retirees or the Americans and Canadians who come in actually to live, not to work. We can work, but to enjoy the life. And because it's a media developed term, even it's more legal, expat, I found it more correct. But I understand your point. Even I would not consider myself migrant to Mexico. But yes, it depends how people look at things. I didn't find this offensive. It's interesting that people being in Mexico thinks it's offensive.
Yes, it comes up quite a bit on some of the groups on social media that are based for people who are based in different parts of Oaxaca. But back to your original question, what I love about Oaxaca, what I find magical about Oaxaca is that the culture is very old and it has been retained and it remains alive. It is not a culture that is on show for tourists. It is a culture that is based very deeply in tradition, in family, artistic designs that are thousands and thousands of years old, that are on the walls of some of the many ruins around Oaxaca that people go to visit. It is a culture of food and family and kindness and warmth. You can say that about most of Mexico. But what is also truly unique about Oaxaca, in my opinion, is the artistic history and tradition. The city proper is surrounded by many small villages, each of which often has its own specialty in terms of artisanship. There's the village where the rug weavers weave rugs. There's the black pottery village. There's the village where there are unbelievably talented artisans who craft and paint these wooden animals and creatures and sculptures. There's the green pottery village. It's just a remarkable place and has always been a real magnet for people who are interested in art and craft and that kind of beauty. And then there's the food, of course. It's Oaxaca is where the two big M's, mezcal and mole. Mezcal is obviously a booming industry, and it is where, and Oaxaca is its home base. This is where mezcal was created and continues to be manufactured. Oaxaca is also known as the land of the seven moles. There's supposed to be seven classic types of mole, which is a wonderful, it's a stand-in word for a type of a sauce. That's very basic. There are probably many other ways that are more sophisticated of describing mole, but mole is a fundamental underpinning of Mexican and Oaxacan cooking. And it is very labor intensive. I've taken a cooking class in how to make mole. I practically cried because it was so difficult. It takes hours and in some cases several days, but it's just a place where history is very alive. It doesn't feel like it's, as I said, put on for the tourists. And tourism is the biggest industry in the city of Oaxaca. I can't speak to the state because it's a very agricultural state, but certainly in the city of Oaxaca, tourism is the biggest moneymaker. And these wonderful attributes are the things that people come here to see. And it's funny, I didn't even know. I saw back in the 90s, I was reading a travel magazine and I saw this word and it was Oaxaca. And I got very curious about the word because it's such a strange spelling and the pronunciation is not what you would think. And I started to dig a little deeper and dig a little deeper. And ultimately, I had my first trip here. I came in March of 1995. I loved it so much that I came back for Christmas of 1995. I've been here for all of the major holidays. There are 4 events of the year that are huge crowd drawers to Oaxaca. One is the Day of the Dead, which is in the fall. It is not Halloween, and I won't go into that, but it's a beautiful holiday. There is Easter. We're just at the start of Holy Week, and I woke up this morning and I live a few blocks from a church and I could hear beautiful singing.
It's a Palm Sunday today.
Exactly. And I had heard people in the church singing this morning, which was such a lovely way to start my day. And the other 2 important festivals are Christmas, which is just so beautifully celebrated here. The whole month of December is filled with parades, and it's a very spiritual time, but it's Christmas. It's wonderful. And the final one is a holiday that is unique to Oaxaca, which is called the Guelaguetza, and it's held the last 2 weekends of July. And it's a celebration where there are 8 regions of Oaxaca, and each region has specific dances that are unique to that area. And the different dance groups from all over the state of Oaxaca come to the city and perform their dances, and it's magnificent. So those are the 4 main big events. I have been lucky to have been here for all of them. And it's a vibrant, vital, engaging place. And I will also say that no matter how many times I've been here, even living here, I always find something new. I learn something new, whether it's a ritual that's being offered or it's a town that has some really interesting museum that I didn't know about or whatever. There's always something new and different to do here. I sound like a commercial, but I truly believe that I have found, to use the word for the 3rd time in our conversation, I have found truly my sweet spot. And that's not to say there aren't a number of challenges. Oaxaca, like the rest of Mexico and the rest of the world, is currently going through a very significant water crisis. A very challenging thing to balance out the need for tourism with the very serious but the water crisis and need to be much more conservative with water usage. There's a lot of challenges here. There are a lot of things I will never understand because it is not my native culture, but I am learning every day. And I am very glad to say that I have some wonderful Mexican friends, as well as my other Americans and Canadians who live here. It's a very easy place to make friends. There are a lot of opportunities for socializing, and it's not perfect. And living here in an apartment as a tenant is a very different experience than how I have come in the past. Even when I've stayed in a long-term apartment rental, I've still been spared the basics of life having to do with making sure your garbage goes out on the day that the garbage pickup comes. And if the garbage pickup doesn't happen, what do you do? And all of the day-to-day challenges of life in another country. But they're trade-offs that I'm happy to make, at least for now.
So I can define, listening to you, that what actually attracted you to this place is cultural immersion and all opportunities which this city offers in this regard. And I know about special artistic and cultural taste of this place. I know that why it attracts so many artists and people, creative people to this city. And even like the definition, what we touched before about expat versus migrant, which the first time I hear, at least from person of, our age group, like I understand how it's different from San Miguel de Allende, because over there, it's cultural place as well, and they emphasize San Miguel de Allende known as a cultural place, but it's more like Western culture. What I like about Mexico, it's different options. It's opportunities to find actually a place which resonates with you. And I like after visiting San Miguel de Allende, for example, I like it, but I don't want to live there. It's not my place. Sometimes you feel it's your place, and sometimes you like it, you understand that it's good to visit, but it's not your place. And Mexico offering with variety of states and cultures, even which are historically lived on such a big territory, offering different places with different lifestyle. And yes, you need, if you're lucky as you were in 95, like to land in this place and immediately feel that it's your home. And for some people, they need time and actually travel if they incline to find this connection, internal connection, to find the place which speaks to the soul.
And that's where your services are so helpful in terms of helping people understand this is a very large country. There are all kinds of climates, all kinds of geography, all kinds of people, all kinds of traditions, and you have to find the place that's right for you. And it's funny what you were saying about San Miguel de Allende. I have some very dear friends who live there, but I feel like they basically took their lives in the United States, picked it up, and moved it and dropped it down. And they live in, this isn't even being, they live in a bubble. A lot of them have filtered water so that they are able to drink the tap water. In Oaxaca, that is very rare. We don't drink from the tap, and that's true in a lot of Mexico. We buy these very large plastic containers of drinking water called garrafons, and the tap water is for washing dishes and for washing your body, but it is not drinkable. So there are a lot of things that are about living in Oaxaca that are very Mexican. And that's also, if you're a person who's looking for living at 100% American comforts, this is probably not the place for you. It's a very self-selecting kind of a place. It's for people who want a different experience of Mexico than just simply transplanting themselves from their comforts of the United States to their comforts in Mexico. And that's what I find so exciting about it as well, is that I am adapting, I am adjusting, I have to. And I find I'm sometimes challenged, and sometimes I find it really easy. I don't wear very much makeup, which is different maybe than how I lived in New York. And the cost of living, I can go to one of the local markets and buy fresh fruits and vegetables, a huge, massive quantity. And it's very inexpensive. Of course, then I have to bring it home and I have to put it in tap water and add some disinfectant to it before I eat it. Fruits and vegetables need to be affected. And that's another difference between the United States and here. But it's part of the life and it's part of what makes it so unique to me.
I think the small new habits you mentioned, and actually I had the same in Curatora, which is not so far from San Miguel de Allende. So I know that you need to wash and what you need to add to the fruits and vegetables. But like to me, it's interesting at the beginning, but after that, it's okay. I don't find, and I believe it's better than whatever we buy. Because first of all, it's organic food, which like they even don't have such a term, and they just wear how people are living, and they trying adjusting and they have a good life, called people. And I'm just wondering, rather than what you mentioned so far, and you mentioned several interesting like local points, lesson learned. What has been one of the most surprising lessons you learned since you're living part-time in Mexico, in Oaxaca?
Wow, that's a really interesting question because I'm going through a challenging time right now, and I'm going to be completely transparent about it. When I left New York to come down to Oaxaca in the beginning of February, I came down with a slight respiratory infection. It wasn't serious. It's the kind of thing in New York you take some, you sleep a lot, and it goes away. I'm in Oaxaca. It is the hot season. The heat usually starts in April and May, but it came early this year. It has been very hot. It has been very dry. It is not yet the rainy season, so the air is quite dusty. And I have had such a difficult time. I've been sick for about 5, 6 weeks now. I've been sick more than I've been healthy since I've been back in Oaxaca. And I am really concerned about it to the point where I am considering coming back to the States for a couple of weeks just to get into a different climate and try to get this respiratory infection out of my system. That's been a big challenge. Now, the good news is there are wonderful doctors here, and the healthcare has been, in my experience, over many years of visiting here, quite good. This is more, I think, of an environmental issue than it is a specifically the kind of healthcare services that I've received issue. But it is challenging to live here if you're not accustomed to the heat, which is intense and will continue to be. We're at the peak now, which doesn't usually happen, as I said, until April and May. And in fact, a lot of the Americans and Canadians who live here will go away during the hot season because it is so hot here. So that's been a big challenge for me to adjust to. I love the 4 seasons. I like winter. I like being chilly a couple of months of the year and all the other benefits that come with living in a 4-season part of the United States as I do. So that's been very challenging for me. I was told that it would be difficult to make Mexican friends. Fortunately, I've been able to do so, but that can be challenging too. I remember being here at Christmas time. I was with a friend, and this was pre-peak tourism. Peak tourism really started to happen in the mid 2000s, but this was in the 90s, and the city shuts down for Christmas. And if you're here and you're staying at a hotel and the restaurants are closed and the museums are closed and people are with their families, it can feel a little isolating. Listen, just being in a foreign country in general, whether it's a holiday or not, can be challenging. And I think it takes a certain amount of courage and willingness to try things, to be on your own more than maybe you're normally comfortable with. I love my time alone. I feel very lucky. I'm not somebody who has a problem eating in a restaurant by myself. If I want to do something and I don't have someone to do it with, that doesn't stop me. But there are some people that it's very difficult for, and that can be a real challenge as well. Thankfully, there are wonderful things like Zoom, and you have the ability to have face-to-face conversations with your friends and family that were not possible in the past. But it can still get challenging and lonely. And I am always going to be home for Thanksgiving, no matter what part of my time in Oaxaca it falls into. I'm always going to come home for Thanksgiving. It's my favorite holiday, and it's when I get to see my family and friends without question. So I think the rhythm of learning to live in another country is a process. It can be challenging. It can be exciting. As I said, you learn new things, you meet new people, but I don't want to sugarcoat it. There are things that are different, and you have to have enormous patience. You have to have the ability to not overreact, which can be, for this high strung New Yorker, sometimes can be a little tough for me. Yeah, there's definitely things that I've had to think and rethink as I have spent more and more time here.
But as far as I know, and you mentioned there are more expat or migrant groups, like social clubs, like over the years, and with more and more people coming to Oaxaca and any other place. So how these groups are supporting? Because it's people actually in the same boat, speaking about being out of family during the holiday times. And holiday, yeah, I understand it's not only 2 days, it can be 2 weeks in next Christmas time with family. But I think after people learn about it, there's opportunity for these groups to unite together to have, I don't know, good time together, to have to create new, it's not family, but so-called friends.
There are people who consider their friends here the family they choose. I am very lucky to live in a city that has an incredible resource, which is called the Oaxaca Lending Library. It started originally a number of years ago as simply a library, place for both Americans, Canadians, and Mexicans to come and meet each other. And they have created all kinds of what they call intercambios, which are small groups where you speak in each other's language to help each other. And it has grown and evolved to be a huge resource in the community. They run trips and hikes, and they create opportunities. When I was here last year for the 4th of July, there was a 4th of July picnic. They get together for Christmas, for Thanksgiving. There are voting drives that happen that are generated out of the library. There are many opportunities for socializing. There are bridge groups and knitting groups and all the things you're talking about that enable you to create connections to other people and to have some really amazing experiences. They run some day trips that have been just remarkable. I do feel very lucky, and I'm sure other large cities in Mexico or mid-sized cities have similar resources. This is the one that I know and I get to benefit from, and it's been a huge help. Even if you're just feeling like a little bored or lonely and you want to go pop into the library and get a book and chat with somebody and buy a cup of coffee, it's a real social center and it is enormously helpful.
I really like it as a book lover myself. And actually, I visited the San Miguel de Allende Library, like very historical place. It's actually club for the people who, about the culture and about communication. And there's similar library as a center, English with English-speaking people and books in Merida, like in different centers, which became center of this cultural life. And I really like this aspect of life in Mexico because, again, there's opportunity to live with locals, as local, but to communicate and find your circle of interest through such resources, as you say, as a library. As we going again to the topic of our conversation, of what you would advise for aspiring retirees or say people after who are looking for relocation abroad. It might be Mexico, which we are very like to discuss for hours. It might be different place if they choose to. So what advice you would give individuals looking to retire abroad based on your own experience?
It's funny, as you're talking, I'm thinking about the hot spots right now. There are a couple of places in the world that everybody's talking about, Portugal being one, Ecuador and Costa Rica being places all over the world. I think I was lucky. I have to say this. I was lucky. I have a lot of female friends who are single, who are on the brink of retirement, and who don't have any clue what they're going to go. They don't want to stay in New York because it's expensive or they're done with New York or whatever, and they don't know where to go. So on the one hand, I feel very lucky. This happened to me in a very organic way. But I think if we're really trying to figure out where you want to go next, the only thing you can do is just get up and go and start exploring, and not to go with a tourist mindset, but to go with the mindset of maybe You settle yourself in a particular part of a city. I'll use Portugal as an example. You go to Lisbon, you settle yourself into a particular neighborhood. You get to know the neighborhood. You figure out where the locals shop for their food. You figure out where the tailor is. Any of the services that you might use in your life in the United States, you find them. You find your fishmonger and you start saying good morning.
About language, I'm sorry, it's what I'm speaking about. You need to understand the country if you have time to visit to different places. And so,
Yes, absolutely. I think you're right to bring it up. I guess I just made assumptions. You certainly, if you're going to move to a place, you certainly need a basic fundamental course in how to communicate. There's no question. You miss so much if you can't. I am so frustrated. I've been taking Spanish for a long time now. I am so not good at it. So not good at it. For some reason, it has really been a challenge for me. But I stay with it and I plug at it and I speak to Mexicans and they are appreciative of my efforts and they kindly correct me. And language is an essential. It's an essential. And I guess maybe that's something you factor in. You don't move to France if you've spent your entire life maybe studying Spanish. I don't know. I'm not in that position, but I think there's a certain amount of dreaming coupled with very practical, realistic aspects of life in another country. And everybody's on their own journey and figuring it out for themselves. I mean, you can certainly speak to the most important things about figuring out where to go far better than I could. I can only speak to my very specific journey and experience in Oaxaca. And they are inordinately patient with me in my Spanish. I can't conjugate past tense or future tense. So when I talk about the future, I kind of point forward. When I talk about the past, I go like that. And people manage to understand me and smile and laugh. And I'm trying, but it is a big challenge. And it can be for most people when you're trying to integrate into a new culture.
that's why I'm telling that for people for this age group, it's very important to navigate to the countries and places where there's already community, because that's the first couple of years, maybe even of adaptation, adjustment to the new culture. Actually, your fellow expats, even, it's the first help you can get, like advice is where to go, what to do, which sometimes locals, they helpful as well. And I very appreciate Mexicans with their open heart towards foreigners, actually. But that's why I believe Mexico attracts so many Canadians, Americans, and not only because of this kind of environment and opportunities to find those communities and help at the beginning, which still required specifically for a single woman.
It's funny, as you're talking, I'm smiling because when I arrived here 2 years ago for my supposed to be 2 months and turned into 4 months stay, I found a godmother who lived next door to me, this lady who lives in the hotel where I was staying. She's the character of Eloise at the Plaza. She lives in the hotel. She's the only person who does. She is in her 80s. She is as active and as feisty and as engaged and as creative as anyone I've ever met. And she really was like a godmother to me because she taught me where to go get the best coffee, what foot doctor to go see, the restaurant that nobody knows, that hardly any Americans know about, all those kind of insidery things. And you're absolutely right. I didn't recall that until you specifically said there's a community of people ahead of you that can be very helpful resources. And maybe one of the tricks is to, before you make a trip to another country, you try to connect with those people in advance through various social media groups. I've done that. I've reached out to women living in Oaxaca before I've made long-term trips here and said, hey, I'm coming to Oaxaca. I'd love to take you for a cup of coffee and pick your brain. I made one of my closest friends that way. And do your lead work ahead of time as much as you can. Like I said, sometimes the hardest part is that going out to dinner by yourself when you first get to a new place. It can be very challenging. Find somebody and say, hey, I'll take you to dinner in exchange for some of your information about this place and your thoughts and your opinions. So there are ways to make things a little bit easier and a little more seamless.
So, as someone who has successfully navigated significant life transition and helped others, how do you envision your coming years? What is your vision for the future? If we can not only dream, envision something. And are there any projects and goals you are particularly excited about?
Absolutely. I guess my fantasy is that I will be able to, for as long as possible, maintain two residences in the world. I'm not done with New York. Truth be told, I liked that energy and and I still think of New York at this point as home, although Oaxaca is creeping up quite quickly to being my home. So my fantasy hope is that I am able to maintain these two homes and to have the freedom and flexibility and income to be able to go back and forth between the two because my work can be done from anywhere. So that's the fantasy. I hope it's a reality. I expect to make it one as much as I possibly can. If I have to make some hard choices in the future about one or the other, I will do so, but I'm not there yet. I'm still enjoying my freedom right now. As far as my future projects, I'm really excited about this virtual coaching group I'm putting together. I'm in the process of preparing the curriculum, which is a very broad word for the topics that I think will be most interesting. I'm getting a lot of really good feedback and ideas from women friends and people who would be ideal candidates for something like this. I'd love for your listeners to reach out to me and ask me questions about it or offer suggestions. The thing about coaching is it's a coactive experience. And it's not just, I'm not the expert in your life. You are the expert in your life. As a coach, I am coactively creating something with you based on the skills I can bring and the material that is you that we shape and mold and remold and turn into what you want it to be. So when I use the word curriculum, it sounds a little too structured, but it's going to be conversation with women in all different stages of their lives, and the ability to share with each other from our experiences is very exciting to me. And I think that's where the real learning happens, is from hearing about what other people have done and to learn from their successes and their mistakes, quote unquote. Nothing is a mistake. I think everything does happen for a reason. And I'm really excited about it. So again, I'd like to encourage your listeners to come to either join my Facebook group where I talk about it, and I'm starting to really put it together, called Emily Rubin Life Coaching, or to email me at emily@emilyrubinlifecoaching.com, because I want to hear from people who might be interested. I want to hear ideas. I want to hear what people want and what they don't want. This is a collaboration between me and hopefully what will become a very important community for myself and for other women.
Thank you very much, Emily. I wish all your dreams come true. And I know that you're working in this direction. And I really enjoyed our conversation. So today we've had conversation with Emily Rubin. Thank you, Emily.
Thank you very much, Emily. I appreciate the opportunity.